my tone. You can't step to my throne. They ain't working like me. I did this on my own. You asking where we been, huh? I don't know where to begin, huh? All this dirt on my skin. I just came here to win.
Hey, how's it going? It's Larry Streeter, CEO of Cannabis Media, and I'm the Accomplishment Junkie. Today I'm here speaking with Dr. Truth, and I want to let her do an introduction as to who she is and what it is that she does.
Hi, Larry. Thank you for me. I'm Dr. Ngonzi Truth Crushshon. I'm a licensed eligible psychologist. I am currently located in Atlanta, Georgia, and I have a private practice here.
Okay. So what sparked your interest in this particular field?
Oh, my goodness. Well, my parents are helpers. I'm from Chicago, the south side of Chicago. Mm-hmm. So my parents are educators, and we've always given back to the community, to urban youth, to lower income communities in Chicago. So Inglewood, West Inglewood. And so I always knew that I wanted to be a helper. I did not know that I wanted to become a psychologist, but I always knew that I wanted to help. Social justice is really big in my parents' life as well as in my community. Because my parents kind of grew up poor. My mom was one of 12 children in Mississippi, Louisiana. And my dad was one of 2. But his mom came from a family of 12. And so just, you know, how they say, try to make $1 out of 15 cents.
Right.
And the importance of education and just trying to help people help themselves, to empower people to help themselves.
Right. Okay. So basically, you're saying it kind of made sense just to start to, in order to help people, just to understand them mentally, and that kind of helps you. Okay. So you have a mission. You're trying to figure it out. I got you. Okay. So what was the length of time it took you to acquire? First, what is your title?
Okay. So my title is I am licensed eligible, which basically means I have a doctorate in clinical psychology, but I am studying to pass the EPPP, which is the license to become a psychologist. So just because I have a doctorate does not mean that I'm a psychologist. We also have ethics and other type of qualifying exams that we have to pass, and we go before the board to either verbally or by testing present that we are worthy of becoming a psychologist. So that title comes with lots of prestige and things like that.
Okay. So most of us generally hear 3 main titles, which are, when it comes to mental health professionals, which is therapist, a counselor, or a psychologist. Can you explain a little bit the difference between those?
Sure. So therapists and counselors are usually like a generalized term for, you can have a school counselor, someone that usually children and parents interact with in the school system, but they are there primarily to advocate for your child's education and to focus on their academics and their social emotional learning as it pertains to school only. Right. So usually school therapists or counselors will refer out to a therapist outside of the school or to a master's level, usually therapist, or LCP, which is a licensed clinical professional, or LCPC, a licensed clinical professional counselor. All of these are titles and licenses that people take tests to earn. In addition to their degrees, so bachelor's, master's, doctorate, things like that. So a lot of times the schools will refer out if the child or the family's concerns go outside of the scope of academics or social emotional learning. And so they may come to us for testing, for psychological testing, for ADHD testing, for IQ testing, for depression, anxiety, for things that are outside of the scope of academia.
Right. Okay,
So, like, let me. So the psychologist. So the psychologist.
Oh,
usually,
yeah.
oh, sorry. There's a
No,
lot of different titles. Social workers too, but I'm gonna. So social workers are sometimes inside of the school as well.
Mm-hmm.
They have licensure and things of that nature too, but it depends on which area and which context that you work in, because you can have a social worker that has a different focus in the side of a hospital because they may be more health based versus a social worker inside of a school that's more academic or education based. And so when you come outside of a school system or outside of a hospital, I have a private practice, then you may come to me as a psychologist for testing, for psychological testing as a child or as an adult. We do disability assessments for Social Security disability, as well as other things. Adults also have ADHD, depression, anxiety, PTSD, some other things, and they may need a formalized diagnosis, either for work, for time off, or just for other reasons to receive accommodations, whether at work or if they're in school, because we have a lot of college students that come to us as well for testing and for therapy. And so the psychologist usually works on the clinical side of things, especially a clinical psychologist. So we can go from least severe, because I can see a child that's having academic concerns, and then I can go all the way up to clinical or the most severe. So that may be schizophrenia. So hearing voices, seeing things, visual hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, tactile hallucinations, hearing, seeing things, paranoia, and things of that sort.
Right.
But we are not psychiatrists. Psychiatrists are medical doctors that prescribe medication.
Okay.
Usually psychologists and therapists, we do talk therapy.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned degrees. What degrees have you acquired to get to your position?
Okay, so I have, let me start. Should I start all the way at grammar school?
Yeah.
Well, I went to Roseland Christian School for pre-K.
Okay.
Well, that's not the south side. Well, maybe that is the south side of Chicago, in Roseland.
Right.
Then I was homeschooled at West Englewood Christian Community School, my parents' school, all the way up until my junior year high school. Go AOL. I was just telling my mom about that video that we made in high school with Drew. What was it, Drew Hill? I can't remember. Put it in the chat if you remember the song.
Yeah.
So I was the last graduating class from Academy of Our Lady in 1999. I'm telling my age now. After attending there, I attended Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, which is a HBCU. Woo woo. And then after that, attended Argosy University, which is also known as the Illinois School of Professional Psychology. And that's where I attained a doctorate in clinical psychology. She said it was Drew Hill. But thanks for asking.
Oh, okay. All right. So, so what was the length of time that you spent in school?
All my life.
Yeah.
You have me telling you my age again. So I took a brief break. Right after Fisk and started my doctorate program. I think I took a 1 or 2 year break. But other than that, I think it was about 15 years. Well, how many is that? That might not be right. So 12 years of K through 12. So that might be 13 because I have to add K and then pre-K. That's 13, 14. 4 years for Fisk. What's that? 18. 2 years for the master's at Fisk. So that's 20. And then 7 years for the doctorate. So 27 years of school.
Oh, okay. So were you aware of the length of time that it would take to get there, or did you started adding on as you went? Like, oh, I could do a couple more years. I could do a couple more. Was it like that?
Well, I did not know I would be in school for 27 years. I didn't even know it was 27 years until you just asked me. I knew most parents want their children to go above and beyond them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew that I wanted to make my parents proud. I did not initially want to become a psychologist. I did not know that Blacks could become a psychologist. I thought it was a white male profession. I knew that a lot of Black people didn't have time to lay on somebody's couch for years and years. But I think when I think of therapy, I think of psychoanalysis, which is you're in therapy forever. But that's not the case anymore. You could go to therapy for 10 sessions or 8 sessions and, work on some things. So no, I did not know it was 27 years of school.
Right.
If I could do it over, I probably would combine my master's and my doctorate program, because now they have combined master doctorate programs where I could have been done with that portion. So that 4 years and 2 years of the master's and 7 years of the doctorate, which was 9, I could have made 5 years. So if I could do it over, I would do the 5-year master's doctorate program instead of doing 9.
Right. Okay. I was totally going to ask you, like, what advice would you have for people, seeking a similar path? Like, what did you wish you knew now? So that's a good one.
I can share some more. Sure. Because a lot of times, even when I went into my doctorate program, they warned a lot of minorities, Black and brown people, when they come into programs, that of kind of like our splitness when we come into programs, because a lot of times we have to work and go to school at the same time.
Yeah.
And that takes our attention away from our studies sometimes, because we're focusing on 2 things instead of just focusing on one. But it's a catch-22, because many of us don't come from money per se, where we have parents that can pay. My doctorate program was $100,000 program or more. Right. But I had to work through my program in addition to getting grants and scholarships and things of that nature. So that's one thing that I would advise, just to have an outlet, have someone and support that can help you through your program. So for me, my support were my friends, my coworkers, of course, my spiritual beliefs and going to church every week. I tried to keep that going, even when I had papers due. And also the Association of Black Psychologists helped me to become another support system for me during that program.
Right. Okay. Given, you mentioned earlier that, you felt that it wasn't for Blacks, that it wasn't a field that you could get into. So one, what kept you pushing towards it, and what made you open your eyes to say, yes, I can also do this? Like, what did that for you?
So I met Dr. Sheila Peters at Fisk University, who was a Black psychologist. She was also a preacher's kid like me, and I saw myself in her, and that's how I knew that I could become. She was also a clinical psychologist, so the exact same profession that I eventually became. But she also coupled her psychology with the community. And so there was this class that we took at Fisk University called Family-Centered Community Building, where the former Vice President Al Gore came into our class, and we coupled with him on how to do outreach with foster children. She was already doing this work. And so this was just another class to help us build on this work of intertwining community building and family-centered goals within African-American low-income families and communities. So how do we support people, especially foster children, people that may not live with their birth parents, and how do we help them transition through the foster care system, and what happens when they're aging out of the system. And I know I'm going down a rabbit hole, maybe losing people. I'm sorry. But the importance of shoring them up and providing wraparound services for the foster child, because they're still a part of that village. So it takes a village to raise a child, and that's where I saw myself combining what I had known all my life, which is my parents and community work, with psychology, because I knew I couldn't just sit in the office and talk to people laying on my couch. I had to go out. So most of my jobs have been out in the field. I started off in the profession in mental health, juvenile court. So I would go into the courtrooms and advocate for my youth, Black and brown boys and girls and adolescents, to help provide them services and give them the services that they needed, probably before they had contact with the law.
Okay. Before I ask another question, let's answer. Julian wants to know: do you think it's ever too late to become a psychiatrist?
A psychologist. Hi, Julian. Thank you for your question. I don't think that it's too late to become a psychologist. It's never too late. I had someone in my program that was in her 60s, and she was on the track to becoming a psychologist. So it's never too late.
Okay. All right.
And you don't have to retire. As a psychologist or therapist, you never have to retire. You're just going to sit in that little comfy chair like a college junkie right there. And, and now we're actually doing telehealth because of COVID-19. So we're doing it from home sometimes or from our office. And so the only thing that you have to have working is basically your mental capacities and your voice and your computer.
Okay. Okay. Julian wants to also know, at what moment did you know that this was your calling?
That's a good one. You're getting deeper. I would say that I knew it was my calling. Maybe when I met Dr. Peters, and I could see myself doing what I had done as a child, like combining that community, the community service, the outreach. So with my parents and in Inglewood, we do like outreach ministry. We do clothing drives. We do food drives. We do all of that. My mom was also a social worker. And they told me that all in my doctorate program, that you act more social worky than psychologists, because social workers are usually ingrained with social justice type of, we have to do Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so before we can talk about therapy and other things that are going on, we have to make sure that our clientele, especially lower income clientele, that they have food, that they have housing, that they have clothing, that they have the basic necessities first, or they won't be able to hear when they're in school. And or pay attention because they're sleepy, or they didn't have air condition or heat or whatever that is, the basics. Then we can work on the next levels and the next steps of the mental health and everything else that comes along.
Okay. I was actually going to ask you, that was kind of where I was trying to go with it, as far as like, how do you go about helping people that's kind of lost, that you say grow up without parents or whatnot. But let me ask you, Crystal wants to know, have you been overwhelmed with cases or clients because of the pandemic?
Oh, yes. Yes and no. Yes and no, because, we have a cap on the number of clients that we take. But I have a few jobs and a practice. So at times, yes. So we receive a lot of crisis calls for suicidal and homicidal clients, whether those are youth or adults. So yes, some weekends there aren't enough beds to hospitalize the number of referrals that we are receiving. And so sometimes our youth and adults have to remain at a medical hospital until that Monday. So I may assess them on a Friday, but they're not hospitalized until that Monday or Tuesday, and sometimes longer because of the rise in, clientele during the pandemic.
Okay. So as you know, what would you say your specialty is? What do you specialize in?
So I specialize in trauma. Also, well, I've specialized in trauma with children and their families and urban youth probably since the beginning of my career, about 15 years ago. But now I'm in private practice, and my clientele that usually chooses me are professional women. And so anxiety, depression, work life, and self-care balance type of concerns.
Okay, in general, what advice would you give those who are suffering from these symptoms?
Find a therapist.
Yeah.
No, we don't give advice.
Vague.
We don't give it. We don't give advice.
Not told? Okay.
But I will say to have a good morning routine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have a good evening routine, because during the pandemic, a lot of people had disturbed sleep, and anxiety and stress was higher. So we already know that we have trauma, especially Black and brown people, from the Maafa.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to have you look that up, MAAFA.
Okay.
But we also have personal traumas, right? Mm-hmm. So a trauma can be a death or a loss of a loved one during COVID-19. It could be separation from family, like we were talking about foster children, but also separation from your extended family, even if you're not a foster child, because in the pandemic, we didn't really have as much social contact with our friends and our family because of fear of the pandemic or COVID-19 and things like of that nature. And so some of the things that help us get better, like socialization, we could not do during the pandemic. So hopefully now we can reintegrate, re-socialize, get back to our normal or new normal, and remember to take that time in the morning to journal, maybe to take that time to recite an affirmation. I say my mirror affirmations. So I love you, Dr. Truth. And my friend today just reminded me that I need to say my first name too. I love you, Ngonzi. But it's important to say it to yourself, right? Because whatever you tell yourself, you start attracting. So you want more love, then you show yourself more love.
Okay. So there was something I wanted to ask you, and I cannot find it, but we're gonna find it because there's a specific mission that you have for the Black community, as far as, and I'm trying to find the wording, but I want to kind of dig in a little bit about that. What do you mean by that? You said something along the lines of not being put in I guess I'll say it in my own words, put in a box because of different situations or mental limitations or advantages. I don't know, something similar to that. What was that?
I don't remember.
You know what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying? So like, say people might have ADHD or certain situations going on, and your mission is kind of to let them know that just because of that, they don't have to be limited or something like that. What was that you were saying? I don't have it written down here.
Okay. I think I know what you're saying. I believe, so there's a stigma with mental health. And when people, I'm assuming this is what you're talking about. And sometimes people fear coming to the psychologist or to a medical doctor for fear of being labeled or diagnosed with a certain diagnosis or diagnoses, so multiple, or receiving medication or things like that. But what I would say is you are not your diagnosis or your diagnoses. You are still a person. We don't call people by their diagnoses. The diagnosis is only to help us treat you. And a lot of times sometimes you may be able to grow out of the diagnosis. So you may no longer have it. You have to meet the criteria. So don't try to diagnose yourself. And 2, also don't shy away from being diagnosed. But you also don't have to stereotype yourself and say, oh, I have ADHD, or I have depression, or I have anxiety, so I can't do blah, blah, blah. That's not the reason why you're given a diagnosis. You're given a diagnosis to say, okay, I have anxiety, so these are some steps that I'm going to take because I know that my anxiety may come out on the airplane.
Right.
So I'm going to practice my deep breathing. So let me practice now within a therapy session. So when I get on an airplane, that I can then practice my deep breathing skills or take a nap,
Right.
Whatever it is that we're going to help you to get through, because that's the purpose of the diagnosis. So you can work through and better manage the symptoms of anxiety, better manage the symptoms of depression, better manage the symptoms of ADHD. So it's not the ADHD that keeps you bound. It should be you better managing those symptoms. And we know that there are people that outgrow ADHD, no longer have it after childhood.
Okay. All right, Crystal, I'll get to your question shortly. Okay, what was it like putting your education to use for the first time? Like, you got out of school, you've graduated, and now you got your first job. Like, how was that for you?
It felt like a bird being pushed out of the nest.
Okay.
Both times. So after the bachelor's degree in psychology, I did not have a job in psychology. So I basically just was pushed into a master's program. So that was easy. Right. But after the master's program, they're like, okay, time to work. Bye. My first job was working with Dr. Carl Bales and his organization, Community Mental Health Council on the south side of Chicago, right next to CVS High School,
right,
87th and Constance. And I worked in juvenile court. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like I had imposter syndrome. But I had a good support system. I had a great boss. I had a great team. I was a part of the mental health juvenile justice program. I knew that the work that I was doing was fulfilling not only to me, but also to my clients and their families. And I just felt connected. So after feeling that fear and doing it anyway, yeah. And, they always gave feedback, after your sessions. I think they let me shadow someone maybe for a couple sessions. And then after that, it was go for it. Like, you've been trained, you have the mental knowledge. That's what you get in school. You get the mental knowledge. And then you have to do the practical knowledge and practical experience. Now you're here with the client and you're the boss. You're kind of like the boss.
Yeah, right.
And you're like, okay, boss, come on out.
Okay.
They trust you, but I also had to earn their trust and to be worthy of their trust, because they're a lot of times in therapy, they are telling and sharing with me their story, which has never been told. So it's a lot of confidential information. They may be telling me about traumas, sexual traumas, physical traumas, all of these things that they have never told anyone. And I'm telling them, I promise not to tell anyone unless it, seriously, unless it is harm to yourself or others. And they have to trust that I'm going to keep that secret. And so I have to kind of give and take a little bit too, so they begin to trust me. So I learned how to develop rapport during those first few years working there.
Okay, give us a little, if you don't mind, give us a little, a couple of just some easy tips on how to build rapport with people, because in life, I think that's a very important skill to possess. So what are some small tips that you could give?
Okay. So he's putting me on the spot today. Well, one tip to develop rapport is to be yourself and to be honest, So sometimes you have to share a little to get a little.
Right.
So I have to proverbially let my hair down a little. So a lot of times in our school systems, we are taught that I'm the expert and you're the client.
Right.
But as we know, sometimes, and that's still true, but it does not have to be so cut and dry.
Right.
So sometimes I may lead with, "How you doing? I'm Dr. Truth," or I might say Miss Crushshon if I want to
Right,
let
yeah.
down my title a little bit. That helps too. That helps to build rapport as well. To let them know you're a person. I may share with them. It depends on who the client is, but I may share that I have a brother. Oh, so you have a brother too, so things like that. So finding some commonalities with my clients, also some shared interests, and also just being genuine.
Right.
So if it's something that they're sharing that's surprising, I might say, "Oh my goodness," because that's surprising. Like, so I have to bring my real self and not a robot to
right.
interaction.
Because it can raise some red flags, I guess, subconsciously for them, and then maybe they might not be like, "Oh, this person is so fake." No, so so in 2006, you founded Faith, Hope, Love Community. This is an organization that symbolizes your passion for empowering individuals with the skills and resources to break the generational cycles of unhealthy lifestyles by changing old patterns of thinking. So, can you? I'll do it. You know what? Instead of going in the direction I was going to go here, breaking patterns. Like, I read, there was a book I read about. It's called, I think it's called The Power of Habit. And can you give us a little insight onto how you came to this idea that people are stuck in patterns? You're a therapist or you're a psychiatrist. I guess you learned this in school, but where did you get to the point where you felt like this is the issue and this is how we fix the issue? Like, how did you just come to that conclusion?
So I didn't have to come to that decision or realization. Lots of books and research have been done regarding patterns, breaking generational cycles, breaking the chains of psychological slavery, and things like that. So we just passed Juneteenth. And so Dr. Naeem Akbar wrote the book, Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery, so we know Juneteenth supposedly, the Emancipation Proclamation supposedly freed the slaves, but we know that on Juneteenth, maybe years after, then there was physical freedom, right, from slavery. But we're still having some psychological residue over the Ma'afa. Again, that's y'all homework to look the Ma'afa up.
Yes.
All right.
We were looking at it now, but I probably can't spell it. So
MAAFA. Somebody put it in the chat.
No, I'll look at it. Okay, so MAF what?
MAAFA.
Okay.
All right. And so
it's Jimmy Mafia. Okay, go ahead.
MAAFA. You'll get it. The Ma'afa.
AA, okay.
MAAFA. All right. So I forgot where I was. Okay. So we're breaking. So there's still a need to break the chains of mental slavery because there's still some missing pieces. I just gave a talk about Juneteenth, and I talked about the transatlantic slave trade and how in the transatlantic slave trade, they separated family members. They separated wives to one country or one state, and then a husband to another state and a child to another state. So we're still trying to reconnect with family even now. So that's why tracing your family roots and learning who you are or rediscovering who you are. I'm still tracing my own family roots, right? I just found out maybe 5-10 years ago that my last name, Crushshon, was Creole. So now I need to do some more research to find out who are my people that are Creole. Is it New Orleans? Is it Haiti? Is it somewhere else? And then tracing that part. I've traced my family tree all the way back like 7 generations on one side and I think 6 on the other side, but it's still more research to do. So how do we remain connected? How do we remain whole, not just in our bodies, in our mind, body, and spirit, but also in our families and in our communities? How do we reintegrate all of the pieces of us so we are whole? Because we are whole, but we just need to reconnect.
Right. Okay. Do you believe that, so based on your perspective, do you believe that these patterns are more so, as opposed to saying we evolved to this point where we just psychologically can't get out of it? Do you think that we are passing it, just like, you know, I might pass it on to my child passes it on, and the way to break it is maybe as an individual, I say, hey, I'm gonna change my mind and I'm going to transfer that philosophy to my child in hopes that she continues and not listen to anybody outside, like, that's giving her the wrong, you know, information. Is it like that, or do you think it's like something a little more deeper than that, instinctive?
So I think it's both.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first step is becoming aware of our thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and where we are kind of stuck or mistaught in our teaching, right?
Right.
So that could be teaching of self and who we are as Black people or brown people or whatever color people you are, you know,
Yeah.
or your thinking as far as your mental health, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what ways do we become aware? And so some people may choose to become aware through their own self-discovery. Some people may choose to become aware through books. Some people may become aware through going to a therapist so they can see some patterns in their thinking or their behaviors. We talk a lot about words, thoughts, and feelings aligning. And so are your words, thoughts, and your feelings aligned? So you say that you want to do or become this, but are your words, your thoughts, and your feelings aligned with that? Do you
Right.
feel that you can become, like somebody asked the question, a psychologist even now? Or do you not? That's the only thing that stops you.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. That's powerful. Definitely. I actually read some. I don't know if I read it or I heard it about a millionaire or a billionaire was saying the difference between him and those that are not is simply that they don't believe that they instead of saying, you know, like if your child asks for something, you say, well, I can't afford that, as opposed to saying, how can I afford that? So it's just the mindset that prevents. So as long as you're trying to figure out how to do something, you'll never be able to do it. If you're thinking like, how can I? No, as long as you're saying I can't do that, then you won't be able to do it. But if you say, how can I do that, you'll figure out how to do that. So yes, that's a very powerful message.
Thank you.
So you moved. So you moved on to Georgia. You moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and you started your own private practice. Now this is after some things I was going to talk about, but we'll get past that, and we'll get to the point where, you know, we know that you moved to Georgia and you kind of had to. Did you? I'll ask you that. Did you have to kind of start over, or did you have an opportunity in Georgia upon going there? But what was your motivation for that?
No, I started over.
Yeah.
I started my practice in Georgia, attained
The private practice, correct?
Yes, my private
Yeah.
practice in mental health in Georgia, and obtained a LLC.
Yes.
Which, you know, the license for business here in the state of Georgia. So yes, I kind of started over, but I didn't have a private practice before I moved.
Right.
But I felt like I had to start over with networking here, with the Circle Atlanta, with Black therapists here. And so how I started over was connecting, by reconnecting with people. So we talk about the support system with clients, but I also have to talk about support system for myself. So the support system is not only good for clients, it's good for everybody. And so I connected via social media with Black therapists who owned private practices, who gave me the inside scoop and shared information with me. They were very open and honest. I love it. Sharing with me the ins and outs of private practices, some pros and cons of private practice, and like rental space and office space and all of that clientele and how insurance works and all the ins and outs of starting a business in Georgia and welcoming me to the city and just everything. So it has been a journey, but I would say for anybody that's looking to start a business or get into whatever field you're getting into, you don't have to do it all in a day. The pyramids in Egypt were not built in a day. Okay. So just take it one step at a time, ask for help, consult your mentors. If you don't have a mentor, you can reach out to people that are in the same field as you to ask them questions. A lot of them are open and honest. What I said was, I'll take you to lunch or tea or breakfast or whatever, just pick your brain. And most people said yes. And I believe that I interviewed like 10 private practice owners. Nobody said no. And I think I maybe had 2 where we had a time conflict and we didn't meet up, but it was only because it was a time conflict, not because they didn't want to share information. So a lot of people want to share information. They love to talk about themselves and their business, and they like to mentor or kind of like share the info, pass it on to the next generation. And so I'm willing to do that as well. So if anybody is out there in the field of mental health or psychology, whether students or just new trying to start a private practice, I'll be more than happy to speak to you.
All right, I got you, Julian. And so that was that's a very good message that you gave there too, when you said that you invited people to dinner. So you offered them something. You didn't just say, hey, let me pick your brain and give me some information. You said, hey, let me take you out to dinner. So it's always good to lead with presenting something, offering some type of value. So Crystal wants to know, like, how do you promote or market for a business that specializes in mental health?
Okay, so that's a good question. So one, I'm on Psychology Today. I'm also on Therapy for Black Girls, and have a social media manager, Anjali, of Ola Shea Marketing, who posts all my social media graphics on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. So that's how I get it out. And she just has me she posts for me short video snippets of symptoms or maybe inspirational messages about depression or anxiety, or things to look for, how to change your diet, drink more water, any of those things, just to keep people abreast of what's going on in mental health, and also to encourage them that everybody has a bad day sometimes. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel happy. We have one with a guy dancing. Choose your energy, So mental health is fun. Well, when people think of mental health, a lot of times, though, they think of hospital, they think of aggression, they think of violence, they think of people that are abused or, things like that. But mental health is about being your healthiest self. But we know that sometimes that also means we go to the depths with people in their depression and in their trauma to help them come back out, to heal, and to be their best self.
Okay.
So answer the question, Crystal.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, wait. Okay, this does have the pronunciation. How do you pronounce that? What's that word again? Ma'afa? Ma'afa. Okay, Julian, Ma'afa. I was supposed to look this up for everyone anyway. The history of slavery and anti-Black racism and discrimination in the United States. The supposed genocide against Africans associated with historical slavery. Is that sum it up? No?
Yes.
Yeah. I was looking for the shortest. There's so much information. Yeah, you would definitely have to look it up, but there is a lot of information. That was the shortest definition or meaning that I could find to kind of sum it up.
Yes. So the Ma'afa is the Black Holocaust, to sum it up, right? The Black Holocaust. A lot of times we talk about other people's Holocaust, but we don't use it in the context of a Black Holocaust. Okay. And so that's what happened with slavery. Just to sum it up in one word, the Ma'afa.
All right. Okay. All right. So you collaborated on a best-selling book in 2015 called Shift. How did this collaboration come about?
Oh, well. Well, I met with Nikki Woods, who was a senior producer of the Tom Jordan Morning Show.
Okay.
I actually met her a couple of times on the Tom Jordan cruise before collaborating with her on her book, best-selling #1 book,
Yeah.
an anthology with 20 women. But in Shift, I talk about some of the ups and downs of my journey of becoming Dr. Truth, because it was not easy. I did not have a silver spoon. I did not have rich parents. So I did lose my home. I did lose my job, the same job that I had, my first job, which was Community Mental Health Council. They closed down. And so I was without a job, which means I could no longer pay my mortgage, which means that I had to move, which means that, it was just a lot of different things that happened. It's called life.
Yeah.
And so I talked about how I bounced back from that, and not just bouncing back, because we always want to skip to the good part. But I talk about how I moved through that, how I felt my feelings, how I cried, how I went to church and praised or prayed or asked God, like, I don't know what to do, God. I feel sad today. I don't want to go. I was still in the doctor program. I don't want to go to class today. But the only I cried in the hallway at school before. And then I had somebody from the Association of Black Psychologists who was a member, and another student help me. He was a year ahead of me, and he encouraged me to stay in school, don't drop out, because life was happening and you have real feelings and you want to give up. I wanted to give up a lot of times throughout this 7 long years of this doctorate program, while working, while, life was happening. My mom was in the ER and ICU and all these other things throughout my 7 years. There's lots of different things that happen. And so what do we do when we know that we have a greater purpose, but life is happening to us? Finances are not always straight. Family is not always straight. Relationships are not always straight. Sometimes our mind is not always straight, right? But you know that God has a purpose for me. God had a purpose for my life, and I knew that I needed to keep moving. So I said, God, I had to surrender. Like, God, what do I do next? Because I'm in the middle of this doctorate program, and they're trying to kick me out because of life that was happening. I got back in. We know that. But I didn't know that at the time that I would get back in. And that is a crisis. So I had multiple crises. And then what do you do and where do you go?
Right.
So I write about that in that book. And I think that was one of the experiences where I knew that I had come out on top, when I was willing to be vulnerable. Because in our program, and especially in our profession as therapists, it's like future psychologists, they tell us that we should not share everything or, as much about your life. Again, because of the expert versus the client. But sometimes that also helps to bridge that gap on developing the rapport, because you know what it feels like to lose a job. You know what it feels like to lose a home. You know what it feels like to have grief. My aunt died while I was in the doctorate program before I finished. My aunt was like my mom. She was my godmom. She lived across the alley from us. My Aunt Jay of Holland's Corner Grocery, 83rd and Carpenter. She raised me. So I worked at her store since I was 7 years old, and she taught me how to run businesses, how to run the books, how to run numbers, So that was a big part of my break. But it also was a big part of my breakthrough. So I'm doing this for Aunt Jay. So a lot of times your seemingly obstacles become like the stepping stone. So I'm gonna do this for Aunt Jay. I'm gonna do this for the foster children. I'm gonna do this for all the people from 83rd and Carpenter. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this to make my parents proud. I'm gonna do this to make myself proud. I know that it's gonna be different on the other side. So I'm gonna keep going, even though I'm burning the midnight oil again to write this paper after I've been working all day. But you know that it's gonna be different on the other side, when I get to work with a kid that may have been labeled with ADHD or called bad or called angry, and I can change that narrative for him and say that he's blessed and say that he is a wonderful child and that he's explorative and exploring his environment and not bad.
Yeah. So, so I want to ask, so in going through those trials as you working your way to this point, first I want to say that I'm convinced after just listening to hearing everything throughout your journey that you're definitely destined to do what, I mean, I'm pretty sure you've done a lot and you've helped a lot of people, but you're definitely destined for this path simply because, just from the point where, you didn't believe that it seems like people have always been placed in your life at the right time to continue to say, hey, keep going, So I want to ask you, through those trials, even though you did have people to motivate and inspire you, as a therapist and understanding how the mind can work against itself, were you also like, pushing yourself, talking yourself through these like you wanted to quit, however, was you convinced like, no, you're not quitting? Like, was it like, did you feel like you were also like giving self-therapy through this process? Or did you need,
Yeah.
like you need people just like, yeah.
Yes. Sometimes you have the people there and sometimes you don't. Sometimes,
right.
Especially when you're at your lowest point, the phone doesn't ring and nobody's texting you because they know you at your lowest point, so they don't have nothing to ask you for because you don't have nothing to give them. So yes, I had to be poured into by God, but also I had to use my self-talk. I even use my self-talk. Like, we don't even have to go back to 2012. We could talk about 2021 actually. And I have to do self-talk even now when I'm now engaged in higher organizations, doing speaking events and things like that I've never done before. And I have to do self-talk back to my own thoughts. So I have to, so for instance, I'm just going to be transparent. I'm not good enough, or I haven't done this before, or why do they want me? And so I talk back to my thoughts and I say, but I was born to do this. And I have African-American history, background. I'm a doctor. I have a doctorate in clinical psychology. So I'm talking back to my thoughts. I can do this. I have this on my vision board. And now I'm going to walk into this and I'm about to slay. Right.
Yes.
So even though the negative thoughts come up, because they don't stop, you talk back to your thoughts and you tell them what's true about you. And I'm going to say, for me, myself and I, true about God. And what's true about God is true about me. And so I'm going to talk back because I know who I am. I have to remind myself who I am. I am Dr. Ngonzi Truth Crushshon, and I was born to do this. I was born to empower. I was born to speak life. I was born to be a therapist. I was born to help people find their purpose.
Definitely. I definitely believe that. So not too long after Shift was published, you had another collaboration in 2018 on a book called Grace. How did that come about?
So that came about through networking, and that was with Tiffany Fincher.
Okay.
She had a collaboration. I can't remember how many women, but it was more than 20. And that book was about writing letters to our younger self.
30. There are 30 women. 30.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
So we wrote letters to our younger self. And I talked to my younger self. I can't remember what my letter was about, but I think it was about body image. When I was young, I had a slimmer frame. And then when I was pre-puberty and puberty, like 12, I kind of blew up. And so I was also a dancer. So my mom used to take me to dance class, like jazz, not tap, but jazz and African dance and things like that. And the leotards for young Black girls were not that great of a variety. And we had to go literally to the adult section of some stores to find leotards that would fit me. And that did not do well for my self-esteem. Of course, my mom still loved me.
Yeah.
But body image is a big thing, especially for guys and girls, but a lot of times for girls, because those comments sometimes stick with us throughout our lives. Throughout our lives. And so I'm still having talks to myself about it. It's not as big as it was then, but still loving my body and my gut for everything that it is. And I'm not going to show y'all my gut. Yes, I am. I don't care. But I love my body. I love my gut. I love everything about me. And so I have to tell myself that every day.
Okay. Do you think that your prior experience enhanced your writing performance for that last project? Well, not the last project, but that project, the last book, Grace.
I would say yes, because I never considered myself as a writer, but I knew that my story needed to be told. The same way here now, as I began speaking for corporate and corporations and Fortune 500 companies. I just spoke for a Fortune 500 company in 2019. Okay. So exciting, right? You never know what you're going to do. God just keeps on putting opportunities after opportunity in front of you, and you just keep walking. Yes. So I never consider myself as a writer or a speaker. I'm still nervous when I write, when I speak. I'm thinking about what other people are going to say. And I'm the number one critic as well, because I want to operate in excellence. But I also have to give myself grace. No pun intended with the Grace book. But you have to give yourself grace, because it's okay to make a mistake. That's what Nikki Woods kind of taught me. Because even though it was a writing, the book was it was a writing, it was an anthology, but we also had a piece where we did a video and an accompaniment to the book. And so she said, don't worry if you speak that, if you now, am I doing this on purpose? Don't worry if you trip over your words, just keep going. Yeah. And so she's been in the media industry for, I don't know how many, 20 years, probably when I was a little girl. I'm telling her age now. Sorry. But she's from Chicago. Or was working in Chicago. I don't know if she's from Chicago, but she was working in Chicago in the media. And so if somebody that's a media guru in my eyes is telling me don't worry about it, then I need to not worry about it and just speak my truth, right? Just like you. Just like you with accomplishment junkie, you may sometimes think who am I or whatever to do this.
Definitely, I'm definitely relating to what you're saying, because it's I'm just I was terrified. I think we talked about this before, about just terrified of doing live, because it's this is live. I was even nervous doing things while we record it and then put it out. I'm still nervous. I'm looking at it. I'm like, but at least this way, I made a mistake. I can't go back and fix it. So yeah, that's definitely something that was very scary. I didn't see this happening, me doing anything like this. So I'm just taking steps to get to a point where I can speak to a large crowd of people, and just put my message out there. So I'm just pushing myself to develop, slowly, little by little.
You're doing it, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Okay. So your latest literary work was a solo project, and that's Black Girls Cry. Okay, 10 active and passive strategies for healing after the death of a loved one. This was published in December of 2018. So you have, so that within a period of 3 years, where I could say, 3 years, and last two was in 1 year, you went ahead and you got your own book published, your own self-published book. So what prompted you to do that one?
Okay, thank you. You are really summing up a lot of my history that I have not even sat down to.
No, I enjoy it. I love, I was researching you. I was like, oh my God, wow. I didn't know all this stuff about you. But yeah.
Me either. Thank you. So I guess those two books, the anthologies before, did prepare me to write my own book, or to give me the confidence to write my own book on grief, which was also near and dear to my heart because I wrote the Black Girls Cry book because of the death and the life of my Aunt Jay. And I was coping and healing from grief myself and helping my mom. Well, we were coping with the grief and healing at the same time. And so I said, if I, as a therapist, am having this much difficulty going through the grieving process of a close loved one, how about others? And this was this was prior to COVID-19. So maybe I need to write a different book, another part 2, you know? And then I found that not only do Black girls cry, but also Black men cry, Black boys cry. So maybe that'll be a sequel to that book, because we also want them to heal as well, especially in the times of Black Lives Matter, and just in the time that we are living in right now with COVID-19 too, with so many people dealing with loss or not knowing how to deal with loss and death, and understanding that death is a part of life. And so how do we make meaning of our loved one no longer being with us on earth? And how do we honor their lives still here on earth? So how do we honor their birthdays or their death days, or how do we just honor them, period? And so what I plan to do to honor my Aunt Jay is hopefully to have college scholarships in her name, Jessie Ruth Holland, scholarships, because she was the block club president of 83rd and Carpenter. She was always advocating for youth to go back to school, to get those school supplies, to go to college. She was a big advocate for business, for business ownership. That's why I have the entrepreneur circle. That was one reason why I started that, because lots of people don't have aunts that own businesses to teach them, like she taught me as a 7-year-old, how to run a cash register, how to run the books, how to shop at a warehouse, you know, how to be fair and treat customers in a manner, no matter if they have money, don't have money, how to treat them like with respect.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, great. That's a great point there. Definitely. That's something a lot of people miss when it comes to business. Just treating, like you said, treating people with respect. And as you spoke about earlier, having rapport and having a rapport with people, showing some humility, not thinking like you're here and they're there. So those are some very good tips.
Yeah.
So based on what you just said, it's like that kind of really summed up the importance of therapy. It's like, you know, you went to school, you kind of understand how your mind works. However, a lot of people don't understand how their mind works or why they may be feeling certain things. So yeah, I guess that's all I had to, if you had something to add to that, but it's just like, yeah, there's a real need, so just like going to the doctor, there's a real need for people to get therapy and kind of understand how their mind works and get those checkups to see that, hey, why am I feeling this way?
Yeah.
So we almost done. So throughout your journey, you have collaborated with many extraordinary people who share your similar visions as yourself. What would you say to those who fear taking such action out of fear of being outshined? And what I mean by that, you know, you actually have had, as you shared today, many mentors. You've worked with some of the things there's a lot more about you that I didn't even cover, but you've collaborated with great people, you know, and you've done this. And a lot of people, you know, I feel are fearful of working with other people for fear of being outshined or just simply intimidated by those who could prove, just those who they see as maybe being above them. So, and you went above and beyond, even when you were looking for help and assistance, you offered these people out to dinner. You weren't afraid to approach them. So from those experiences, what type of wisdom did you pass along to people who are suffering from fear and just being intimidated just to collaborate with people and open up doors for themselves?
Okay. That's a tough question. So I'm not really a great networker in the cold networking sense. I'm more of like a warm handoff type of person.
Yes.
So having the relationships and then people that have relationships with me introducing me to other people.
Yep.
And so you don't per se have to be a networker like at a networking event to say, hi, I'm such and such, nice to meet you, can I speak on your show, versus your network. And I think that Facebook and LinkedIn, Instagram, and places like that are great ways to do that. So friends of friends, so you have to speak up for yourself. And sometimes we are taught, especially as women, not to speak up and dangle out our accomplishments for fear of looking like we have an ego. So I would say collaborations are great. Like even now today, like you reach out to me, I'm gonna say yes. And so now I may refer somebody to you, to connect. So then you all do another collaboration. And so fear is real. Just like I have fear sometimes of speaking, fear sometimes of, when I was first pushed out of that bird's nest to do my therapy with my mental health clients. But sometimes you have to do it anyway. You just say your affirmations and you just do it anyway. Sometimes you have to send that email or that text or pick up that phone or talk to that person or have you a wingman or a wingwoman who may be, more comfortable advocating for you than you are. Right. I love my social media manager because she will do things to pump me up when I'm not able to pump myself up, or it may seem pompous for me to pump myself up. Yeah. So you need a team too. So your team can advocate for you. Your mentor can advocate for you. I have a mentor, I have a coach. I have people in my circle that are looking out for me. Most of my speaking events, after the first one that we did on re-traumatization in the Black community during COVID-19 to help people relieve some stress during that time, I did that collaboration with Chinaze Martinez from Miami, who I went to school with. So you can look for collaborations with people that you know already, and then you build from there, and people see you. So people saw us doing that for free to our community via Zoom. And on social media, we advertised it. But after that, literally every speaking event after that, for every month, all the way up to now, has come from people seeing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So I didn't go out and look for a speaking event at all. They're coming to me. So Felicia Houston has always referred me, to people in Chicago. And then I could just name numerous people, because they know the quality of your work, because they're seeing you out there. But you have to take the first step. The same way I took the first step with the book, and then the one book led to the next book, and then the next book. The same thing with this. Now you connected with me, and now I'm going to connect you with somebody else, and then you're going to connect, It's a cycle, but you have to start it. You have to step out on faith, not fear. Even if you're fearful, you still just step out anyway. Exactly. And don't be afraid to fall, because guess what? Babies fall, but they get back up. Exactly. And then eventually they walk. You got to fall first. I had lots of things that failed, and I failed, but now I'm walking. Now I'm growing up. Like you're not going to be one or a toddler forever. Eventually you're going to be a teenager. You're going to be walking, and then you're an adult, and then, and then you start aging and getting wiser and more refined. So I see you as the guy on what is that show where he sits back and tells the stories and has his cigar. That's how you look to me right now. You're like really refined. So it's like, even though you're saying that this is your first time, but you look really, really refined.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I like really can relate to what you're saying, because I'm more of an introvert, and that's kind of like my style of networking. Like I'm not the person, like I'll go to and I like to be with someone. Crystal is like that, right? So she'll just be like, hey, come over here. So it's like, I'm like,
That is her.
I'm like more like laid back, not necessarily laid back, but I'm introverted. If you get me talking, I'm gonna start talking. So it's like, basically that's my style of networking. I meet people, I try to nurture relationships over time. Like I met you a long time ago. I know when we first met, you probably saw me and see, I was dragged to that, right? And I'm sitting there, I'm quiet, but hey, I met you, and and over time, it just takes me time to warm up to people, So I'm using this opportunity as an opportunity to just practice talking, talking to people. So that is it. Just like you said, it is just doing it, going out there and trying to be. I'm trying to change my pattern of being such an introverted person and be more open. So it's like facing those fears and just getting out there. So yeah.
So one way to change your word, one way to change and become more extroverted is to change your words. So you're not trying, you are.
Yes, I am where I'm going.
Are more extroverted.
I'm the
words, actions, feelings. Words, actions, feelings.
Exactly. All right. So before we go, I just wanted to what message, just any message that you would like to leave for those that may maybe help them along their journeys.
All right. So I'm just gonna say, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Feel the fear. Yes. Feel the fear and just do it anyway. Okay. All right, everybody. It's been great. Well, 2 people we have here. Pretty sure more people will watch this later and enjoy it and learn a lot from it. And so success is not a destination, it's a lifestyle. Find joy in successful things, and productive things. And your journey will be as you paint it. See you guys next time. Yeah. you.